Chapter 19 of the Life of Saint Teresa. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Anne Boulay. The Life of Saint Teresa by Teresa of Jesus. Translated by the Reverend John Dalton. Chapter 19. The saint begins to declare the effects which this degree of prayer produces in the soul, etc. In this prayer in union, the soul is filled with so great tenderness as to be willing to dissolve herself, not through the pain she feels, but by the tears of joy wherewith she is bathed, without knowing how or when she shed them. But it gives her great delight to find in this impetuosity of the fire allayed by water, which, however, makes it increase the more. This language may seem to be so much gibberish, but so it is. In this degree of prayer I have sometimes happened to be so entirely out of myself that I knew not whether I were awake or asleep, or whether in truth I had been in the glory which I felt. I saw myself so bathed in water, which came from my eyes with such force and speed, that it seemed as if it were poured down from some cloud in the heavens. I found that it was no dream, and this happened at the beginning of this prayer, but it quickly passed away. The soul, however, remains so courageous, that if she could then be cut to pieces for God's sake, it would be a great consolation to her. There are excited and renewed all her promises, her heroic resolutions, the lively efficacy of her desires, her abhorrence of the world, her very carefully seeing her own vanity, and all this is observed much more perfectly and deeply than it was in her former prayers. Her humility becomes much stronger, because now she clearly sees that it was no indulgence of hers which procured her this excessive and incomparable favor, nor was her diligence in any way instrumental in making her enjoy this favor. She sees clearly that she was a most unworthy wretch, for if a clear beam of the sun should enter any room, the smallest cobweb cannot be concealed. She sees her misery. She is also so free from vainglory that it seems impossible for her to entertain it, because she has now before her eyes how little she is able to perform, or rather that it is nothing at all. And also that there was hardly so much as any consent of hers, but that it seems, whether she would or not, the gates of all her senses were shut up, in order that she might the better enjoy her Lord. And as she remains alone with Him, what has she to do but to love Him? She can neither see nor hear, unless she be forced, and therefore there is little for which to thank her. Her former life is then presented to her with perfect truth, and also the great mercy of God. All this happens without the understanding being obliged to go in search of it, and there she sees ready prepared what she is to eat and understand. She sees also that of herself she deserves hell, and that instead thereof she receives glory and not punishment. Hence she consumes herself in the praises of God, and I should be glad to do the same now. Blessed be Thou, O Lord, who having found me to be such impure water, has vouchsafed to purify it in such a manner that it may be in some measure not unworthy of Thy table. Be Thou praised, O joy of angels, who hast been pleased to exalt so base a worm. This profit the soul retains for some time, and she already clearly understands that the fruit is not of her own growth. She begins to give part of it to others, without feeling any want of it herself. She begins also to give signs of being a soul that guards heavenly treasures, and she is desirous of making others partake of them, beseeching God that she alone may not be rich. She begins to do good to her neighbors, almost without understanding it, or doing anything herself. But they who receive the benefit understand it well, because the flowers already yield so great a scent, that they make everyone desirous of coming to them. People see she has great virtues, and that the fruit is tempting, and they would be glad to help her to eat it. If the earth of this garden, the soul, be cultivated, by labors and persecutions and detractions and sicknesses, and there are few who arrive so far without these things, and if it be loosened from all self-interest, the water sinks so very deep that the soil will scarce ever be dry. But if the soul have as many thorns as I had in the beginning, if she do not avoid all the occasions of sin, and if she neglect to acknowledge her obligations to God for so great a favor, she soon again becomes dry. And if the gardener should grow negligent, and our Lord, through His sole goodness, should not be willing to give the garden rain, you may give it up as ruined and destroyed. So did it happen to me several times, and truly it amazes me to reflect upon it. If I had not experienced it, I could not have believed it. I write thus for the comfort of such souls as are weak, like mine, that so they may never despair, nor once desist from confiding in the greatness of God, even though they should fall, after having been loaded with such favors as are here mentioned. They must not despair, unless they wish to be totally lost. Tears gain everything, one brings another. One of the reasons by which I have been animated, considering the wretched creature I am, to write this discourse by obedience, and to give an account of my wicked life, and of the favors our Lord had bestowed upon me, and these not while I was serving, but offending Him, has been this. I wish I were some person of great authority, that so men might believe me the more in this respect. I entreat our Lord that His Majesty may bestow the favor upon me. I say, that no one of those who have begun to use mental prayer should be dismayed by saying, if I became wicked again, it would be worse for me to go on with the exercise of prayer. I believe this, if he should omit prayer, and not correct his life. But if he should not give up prayer, he may be confident it will lead him to the port of life. The devil made so fierce an attack upon me in this point, and I passed so long without prayer, thinking that, being so wicked as I was, it would be an act of greater humility to omit. I gave it over for about a year and a half, or for a year at least, for the half year I do not remember so well. This was nothing more than making myself fall into hell, without needing any devils for this purpose. Oh my God, what great blindness! And how well the devil succeeds in his purpose, by laying so heavy a load upon us herein! The traitor knows that he has lost the soul which perseveres in prayer, and that all those falls which he causes us to make will but assist us, through the goodness of God, to make us afterwards advance more quickly in His service. The devil knows all this. Oh my Jesus, what a thing it is to see a soul who has arrived at this state fallen into sin! In Thy mercy Thou dost lend her Thy hand to rise again. Then she will know the multitude of Thy greatnesses and mercies, and her own misery. Then she comes to annihilate herself in earnest, and to understand Thy greatness. Here she presumes not to raise up her eyes to heaven, though yet she raises her thoughts to consider and understand her obligations to Him. Here she becomes devoted to the Queen of Heaven, that she by her prayers may appease Thee. Here she invokes those saints who fell, after Thou didst once call them to Thy service, in order that they may assist her. Here she believes, that whatever crosses Thou dost send, they are all too light, because she sees she does not deserve the very ground on which she stands. Here she has recourse to the sacraments, and to that lively faith which remains in her, from seeing the great efficacy God has given them. She praises Thee for having left such ointments and medicine for the cure of our wounds, and these not only close them, but heal them entirely. At all this she is amazed. And who, O Lord of my soul, ought not to be amazed at so great mercy and increased favors, in spite of treasons which are so foul and abominable, that I wonder how my heart does not break when I write these things, because I am a wicked wretch. And yet it seems as if I wished to make Thee some kind of satisfaction for so many treasons, by shedding these few poor tears, given by Thee, and which, as far as concerns me, are but so much water drawn from a muddy well. Still I am always committing evil, and endeavoring to frustrate the favors which Thou hast done me. Be pleased, O my Lord, to give value to my tears. Make these tears, O Lord, acceptable to Thee. Purify the troubled water of my soul, that so no temptation may be given to anyone, of forming rash judgments, as was the case with me. For I often thought, why Thou dost pass over, O Lord, other very holy people, who have always served Thee and suffered for Thee, and have been brought up in religion, and who are indeed truly religious, and not like me, who had nothing more than the name.